Now, Islamic philosophy, we said, discusses 5 points. Who can give me the first of those 5 points without calling out?
Oh,
without calling out. 1. Oh, yeah. Alright, Tawheed. 2.
This is what comes to you, right? Like you can't teach somebody this, right?
Hang on, we're getting there.
How come 5 gets a circle?
Because I decided to give it a circle.
Because it's complete.
Small one.
Qiyamah is more than just death. It's judgment. Right? The same way we just took this test. If I would have asked you to take this test and then take it and stick it in your folder, would it have meant anything to you?
No.
Would it have any value? Would you have even made an effort if you knew that no one is ever going to look at it? That's the concept of qiyamah and judgment. And if you take a look, one of the biggest issues we have in our Western society, we find that people say this life is meaningless. When it's over, you don't go anywhere. You turn into dust. So they assign no value to this life. And they say, I can do whatever I want, wherever I want. There's no benefit for me to do anything. Because what? I'm going to die and it's all over. This is the purposing of life. It gives purpose, it gives direction. The same way we talked about with the test. Taking a test and not having it graded, not having the teacher look at it, not being evaluated, means nothing then. That test has no value. This life would have no value if there was no concept of judgment. And we're going to get to it. We're going to start our conversation with talking about Tawheed, oneness of God. The reason we start with Tawheed and oneness of God is on the principle and understanding that this concept of being able to understand that there is one God gives us direction, gives us a focal point, right? There are 2 concepts that we have to compete with when we talk about oneness of God. Okay? We talk about oneness of God, the 2 competing concepts are what?
Polytheism and atheism.
Oh. What does polytheism mean?
Many gods?
Oh.
Theism means no.
Poly for polygon.
Huh?
Poly means multi.
Like poly means more than one.
Oh, very good. It's good to see you guys are growing up a little bit. You guys know these terms. It's nice to see that. Alright? We talk about the concepts in competition are polytheism and atheism. Either that there are many gods or that there are no gods. Right? So we're going to go through an intellectual proof on all these topics, starting with the concept of oneness of God, to see that whether or not our intellect has the ability to submit to the concept that there is a God or that there isn't a God. Yes? And as we develop that understanding, we're going to come to the conclusion, we're going to develop a theory within ourselves to be satisfied with the concept that, okay, does God exist or He doesn't exist? If He exists, does more than one exist or does only one exist? The purpose of that conclusion is the self-satisfaction that you have the understanding of what you're doing here. Our end goal at the end of this discussion, at the end of this series of discussions, is to come to the conclusion that we have a purpose, we know how to approach that purpose, and we know what our end result is going to be. Right? And as we talked about it last week, right, that ties back into the concept that you either have a philosophy, and that philosophy is then acted out through worship and day-to-day dealings. Yes? So, the intellectual definitions and proof. First of one, we're going to talk about that a God exists, or that there is a creator, I should say.
So this is 2 years ago, I think.
We've been through this before, but we're going to go through it in a different fashion.
It was, but there's some chaos in the world.
Oh.
Chaos, order. It's proof.
So first, there is a creator. Two, there is only one creator. The next subject that we touch on is justice of Allah. This is a very interesting topic. Once we've come to the conclusion that we understand what it is for there to either be or not be a creator, we have to then determine why is it that some of these actions work out the way they do. Why do bad things happen to good people? What is the impact? Why then do natural disasters occur?
Punish people.
Ah,
So you don't have to get punished.
but I mean there are innocent people when bad people get punished too.
Well,
The child, let's say for example, who is in a fire when a fire happens.
he gets a lot.
He's an innocent child. This is why we have to talk about the concept of the justice of God, because many people can come to the conclusion that, okay, maybe a God exists. I'll accept the fact that a God exists, but I don't understand what kind of God this is. I don't understand why bad things happen to good people. I don't understand why people go through certain difficulties. I don't understand why X, Y, and Z problems exist. So our next dissection comes to the point where we have to go through and understand what does it mean, justice of Allah. The next point that we talk about, and that we will talk about, is prophethood. What is prophethood?
Messengers of Allah.
So carry out the message
To carry out the message. What's the message?
Of God.
Of God. Why does God have a message for us?
Spreading religion.
Spreading religion,
The way of life.
guidance, way of life. Let's say, why does it have to be a human being? Why couldn't it just be a manual that was sent down and you just follow the manual? Why couldn't it be that there's a special creation or a special computer that everybody receives when they're born and then they go through that computer? Why is it that this particular fashion was chosen for the passing of a message, if there is a message? How do you determine that a messenger is real, is true? How do we determine where we can find a messenger? Why is it that we find that now there are no messengers? Why is it that without seeing a messenger ever, we can agree with the concept that he came, he existed, and the message we're looking at is really from Allah and not from him or from some other individual? This is the concept of prophethood that we have to get through, and we have to come to a conclusion. After this, we talk about, okay, fine, if there was a prophet and he came and he left, why is there leadership after him? What is the purpose of this leadership? What is the benefit of this leadership? What happens if we don't follow this leadership? What is the impact? And then if we can't see this leader, what's the benefit? Is there a benefit? Ah. Interesting, huh? And then our final is that this concept of judgment. And is it legitimate? Is it illegitimate? How will it impart? Is it something that, for example, if you followed a certain code of ethics or you followed a certain lifestyle, you deserve to be punished? Or is it that if you followed a certain philosophy, regardless of your actions, you deserve to be rewarded? Meaning, is it possible that for someone to say, I'm a Muslim, and be entitled to reward for saying I'm a Muslim? Is it possible that for someone to do very, very good deeds, but say I'm a Hindu, and not be entitled to any reward? The concept of judgment implicates the idea that there are certain guidelines and rules that someone has to be able to come to a conclusion to be judged upon. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair. What happens to the judgment of an individual, for example, who lives on an island that no other person has ever come on? How are they judged? Are they judged? What is the rule regarding them? What happens to them? What about, for example, someone who lives a very easy life and has no problems in his life? He was born, let's say, into the Hilton family, has lots of money. The Hilton hotels, the owners now. And someone on the other side who was born into the slums. Is there a difference? Are they judged the same? What's the structure? How are they judged? What principles are they judged upon? What is the expectation? So really what we have to do is we have to start dissecting these. And the first one we're going to start dissecting is... Excellent, very good. So what I would like you to do as your assignment is come and bring at least one proof to you that God exists. You have to be able to speak to it. Meaning that you have to be able to explain why you believe that that is a sign that God exists. Yeah, if you can explain it. And the thing is, what's going to be fun is I'm going to give each of you the opportunity to present your point and everyone else to question you on the strength of your point. So you will have to defend your opinion. And if people are found with the same opinion, then you'll have to defend it against me. Okay? So you have to figure out one thing that you see in existence or in life, or that you understand or that you are aware of, that brings you to the conclusion that there is one God. Shall I give you an example, or you guys are okay?
One example.
You guys want an example? Okay. No copying my example, okay? All right.
What if it's similar?
Huh?
What if it's similar?
If it's copying, it's copying.
What if he sorts you?
Okay. Enough ifs. We see that all of creation that exists on this earth is consistent of atoms. The fact that it's atoms and that those atoms have a system and they can work together and that they all have the ability to have some degree of compatibility and they all have the same building blocks and same structure indicates that there was a creator who put all these rules here and put them all together and made these things.
Did I say that there was the fact that his cells working together?
You figure out how you want to present it and what you want to say. Now, who can contest my idea? I presented my theory that I find that one God exists on the principle that atoms are used to create everything. And those atoms all follow the same principle of structure and design.
It's not coincidence.
Oh, I could try to do the same thing. What is gas made of then?
Atoms as well, it's the same thing. What did you say? What was your...
Coincidence.
It's science. Okay. Then we could go into science and say, okay, fine, that if it's science, then if there were no creator, then things would be completely random. Right? Science is a series of laws that every time you perform that rule, you get the exact same result. But if there was no creator, then things, and this life originated randomly or without a creator, there would be no structure to the system. No consistency. You're like levels above everybody else, Matthew. Alright? This is what I want you to kind of bring, and I want you to kind of bring some example of whether what you see in day-to-day life or something that to you demonstrates that if you were to think about it, it's an intellectual question. It's not a question of what you can look up. It's a question of what your intellect submits to. Like, if you were to think about it, that how you could justify to yourself that Allah exists, that God exists, how would you do it? Right? And everybody will have 3 minutes next week to kind of go through and bring their justification and present and be questioned on it. Now, let me tell you something. There may be something that submits to you that makes logical sense to you that you're consistent and happy with that can be contested. This isn't that you have to find the absolute perfect answer. It is possible to contest these concepts. And that's why people contest them constantly. And that's why we have this concept of atheism that exists in the world. Because they can be contested and they can be challenged. But our goal is to use our intellect to amass a series of proofs that will say that no, if we look at all of these proofs, we find that it would be illogical to not accept them or submit to them.
What's going on? We're not paying attention.
Alright? So everybody has one to bring next week, and we're going to start with...
You are going to first one, maybe next week. You are going to first one to
Next
next
week.
week. Okay, yes.
Who wants to volunteer to be second? Okay, there you go. There's two. Jaffer, you want third? Alright, we'll give Jaffer third, and then after that, the rest of you will fall into line. Alright? And then we have, who's presenting our one? Alright, so next week we're going to have a few presentations, a few conversations, and then we're going to get into the detailed thickness of the proof. So really, I want you guys to put some effort into this so that we can move on with this topic quickly. Alright? صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. You're free.
Attendance.
I know.
Wait, you want to keep going?
Okay, thank you very much, all the students.
Yes.
Please do your assignment and whatever happens, be ready for that.